Welcome back to Shooting Womp Rats. I'm Daniel.
I'm done.
And we've had a pretty slow week when it comes to D6 information this week.
Very slow. But you know what? Christmas, and then, people off from school, getting back into school, Valentine's coming up. I get it. Crappy weather. And
now,
I don't know. I'm stretching for it, man. I'm trying to cover my bros out there.
And now for the news.
Well, let's start off this week with my Adventure Seed Monday. The type of adventure is to intercept and confuse enemy communications. The terrain will involve something like mountains or large hills. The complication is going to be a local inhabitant are hostile, or the local inhabitants are hostile. The opposition is going to be a warlord or crime boss, and there's no special hazard this week. And I went ahead, when I was typing this up the other day, I had just a brief bit of inspiration, and I just came up with an idea, which was basically the players are sent by the Galactic Republic to interrupt communication lines between two factions on a non-aligned world. So this could take place during Galactic Republic. Now, the players must get the help of a mountain clan. Now, the problem is that the group turns out to be actively hostile to the players, and unknown to them, a local crime boss or boss NAS, whatever you want to call it, has a vested interest in one side of the conflict and is using the villagers to advance his position. And Daniel also posted something up there. You want me to do it real quick for you, Daniel? Or?
Go ahead.
In a nutshell, Daniel had also posted up that the Jedi had discovered a Sith communication outpost buried within the mountains of Hickabub. I can't pronounce it, so I just Durka America, that kind of thing. The players have been sent by the Council to monitor the traffic and possibly destroy it, depending upon the information that's gathered. Now, upon landing, the players discovered that the inhabitants have been infected with a Sith bioweapon engineered to make them, more pliable to the Sith command. Now, they turn on the players. Boss Kali, a local warlord, is being paid by the Sith to spread the bioweapon. So can the players thwart the warlord, save the people, and intercept the communications? Only Daniel knows.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Exactly. Okay, my character of the week for Tuesday was Yan Myrtle, a shuttle pilot to the stars, or at least the very famous. Now, he owns his own shuttle service and has many contacts with the rich and famous, or, as I like to say it, the self-important impotent. Just me being bitter, people. Sorry about that. Rumor Wednesday, the Inquisitoress is negotiating with the witches of Dathomir for an unknown purpose. I thought this was kind of interesting because I was kind of like, Sith and Dathomir. I'm not really sure how that would work out. Daniel even scratched his head at it, and that takes a lot for Daniel to go, Last thing, Planet of the Week is, I thought it was really cool. It's called, the planet is Kashi. It's an imperial prison world housing over 1,000 prisoners. Though it has a breathable atmosphere, the surface is nearly covered with acidic oceans. The planet is continually hit by asteroids cratering its surface in the upper latitudes. This, in turn, tosses debris into the air, causing shifting weather patterns and earthquakes. The prisoners, over time, have broken up into feudal groups, with the Imperial military taking up the top power slot. Now, the planet is subsistent and must ship in all of its supplies, but there is a rumor that the prisoners actively deal with smugglers.
My character of the week was Admiral Piet. Now, Firmus Piet, you get the impression that, of course, he was the admiral that took over Death Squadron after Ozzel was choked out at the beginning of Empire. He began his naval career with the Axela anti-pirate fleet. Though his posting wasn't notable, Piet's creativity and dedication made his home sector the safest in the Outer Rim. His ascension through the ranks, however, wasn't so much a tribute to his dedication, but his ability to shift blame onto others when mistakes were made.
Yeah, I could just see him on the in a big meeting with Vader. Not it. You got all these, admirals and generals and stuff like that, and they're all kind of like looking at Vader, and Vader's like, so, what do you have to say about that? And everybody looks at each other, not it. I'm just saying.
And fast forward to after he takes over for Ozzel, he made several potentially fatal blunders, but he was able to shift blame. Following the failed capture of Luke at Bespin, the Executor was taken back to Imperial Center, leaving Piet alone. 4 years after the Battle of Yavin, Piet was once again on the bridge of the Executor, commanding the fleet at the Battle of Endor. And naturally, we all know what happens there. An A-Wing slams into the bridge, kills everybody, and sends the Executor to its doom.
Crashing into the second Death Star.
That's it, folks. There's your character of the week.
Now, you said he took up command of the Death Squadron?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not familiar with that. Death Squadron.
Death Squadron was what the task force that Vader was in charge of that went hunting for the Rebel headquarters.
They call them the Death Squadron?
Call them the Death Squadron.
All hail Lucas. Seriously, couldn't come up with a cooler name than that. I mean, you can come up with Womp Rats and names like Bespin and Mos Eisley, but, you come up for a combat group headed up by Lord Vader, one of the biggest ships ever created in the galaxy, and you come up with Death Squadron.
This is a testament to Lucas's bad ideas with names. I read an article recently, and we're going off track here, but this is how we go. I read an article recently about the ending days of LucasArts Game Studio, Lucas Games, and they were talking about the development of The Force Unleashed. They had a very cool name for their character. Instead, Lucas insisted on the name Star Killer.
Okay.
And
so I'm seeing a thing here: killer, death. No, he's not about the light side of the Force, people. He's really evil. He is a Sith.
It's time to belly up to the buffet.
Yep. No Ronto livers this week because I'm not interested. Ew.
I want some of the grilled Duvak, actually.
This week, I was kicking around a mechanic that I had posted up in the G Plus community dealing with character damage. What I had been toying around with, and I'm still kind of iffy on this because Star Wars is supposed to be sort of pulpy in its feel, is that if a person is stunned and they're stunned again, they go to the next wound level. So if they're stunned, they go to wound. And this is a mechanic that's already embraced in the rules as written. Person is wounded, hit again, go to wounded 2. If they're wounded 2 and they're wounded again, then they become incapacitated and so on up the damage tree. The only thing or only damage level that does not become incremental is stun. And so you have a lot of situations as a game master wherein your players get hit left and right, but nothing ever really happens to them. Granted, they do get a -1d, non-cumulative, alright, so from multiple stuns, they don't get additional dice taken away, and that's only for the rest of that round and the next round. There is the rule mechanic out there, well, if they take a number of stun, or a number of times they've been stunned equal to their strength, they're knocked unconscious. I don't think I've had that happen. I'd be really interested to hear what other people have to say about it. I don't know. I'm sort of on the fence with this rule, Daniel.
I agree that it is a somewhat wonky mechanic because, after all, in a battle, if bullets are flying in our case, or in the case of the game, blaster bolts, are going around everywhere, and somebody takes a few scratches, well, that's going to affect how they act in this fight. Mm-hmm. I believe that switching the mechanic around a little bit, and instead of maybe not forcing a wound on the character, but cause some stress, take away up to a die from their actions.
I don't know if maybe there needs to be a rewrite or clarification in how it's applied. Okay, you roll to see if you hit. Okay, well, hit basically says that you have the opportunity to cause damage. Okay, so I've aimed correctly, shot in the appropriate location, and now I roll for damage. At that point, do you consider it a glancing blow? How many glancing blows can someone have? Do you narrate it out as something in the environment blocking the blast? Instead of the person actually taking a hit, perhaps the blaster bolt hits near them, spraying them with debris and stuff like that. I don't know. I've been trying to figure out a way of explaining a stun without actually having to hit the person, graze the person. You can only shoot so many times through someone's clothes. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'd be really interested to see if anybody's got some suggestions on that one.
Now, Chris C. over at the Google Plus community, he had some homebrew weapon range rules that he proposed. The weapon range brackets will be doubled for all rifle and carbine type weapons. All other blaster weapons will have their brackets increased by 50%. With a spectacular success on a shot roll, the player can elect to make an extreme range shot, sacrificing his bonus damage for extra range. Now, the example was that Thanik wants to shoot at a stormtrooper at a squad 80 meters away, which is normally outside of the range of his DL-44. That's after the rule update was 75 meters. He rolls his blaster skills at 6D, while the trooper and his buddies feel confident that they're well out of the range of the smuggler. They decide to not dodge. Thanik's GM sets the difficulty to hit 75 meters at the maximum difficulty, which is 20. Thanik shoots and gets a 26 with the roll and opts to give the stormtrooper a surprise by making an extreme range shot, sacrificing +1 bonus damage to give a shot a max range of 85 meters. The blaster bolt impacts on the trooper's chest plate. Now, there was discussion concerning this. The holdout blasters was the real thing about it. Brian Boring brought up the point that the holdout blaster was a tiny pocket weapon. Why increase the range of it? And why give that bonus to it?
I think it's an interesting rule. And the thing is, I've been listening to this discussion on and off for about a week and a half now. And it seems to kind of fall into two camps. It's the distances aren't long enough. They don't reflect real world mechanics and stuff like that. For the crunch people out there, I get it. I understand that thought process. I think for those people who want a more crunchy special forces, special ops kind of feel, perhaps that might be a good rule to use. But I think the rules as stands right now are actually pretty good because it's pulp. 90% of your action is going to take place within a certain range. Also keep in mind that if you increase the ranges on your weapons, what that in turn is going to make it do is that you can actually touch and be touched by the enemy at longer ranges. So your battles are going to, first of all, lengthen. They're going to be longer. And number two, the whole idea of having fun escapes, either on foot or with a vehicle, are not nearly as important because range has now taken over that mechanic. Back to Chris's thing here, he had made a mention that he could pass up any bonus damage in favor of extending that range. I don't think it was clear. Chris uses a mechanic where for every 5 points you make your hit roll or your skill roll, he gives you a +1 damage. An interesting thing about this is a couple of weeks ago I came up with an idea for extreme range, and certainly not to take anything away from Chris, but extreme range was a mechanic that I had offered up that just basically doubled to the last range bracket, and then for energy weapons, halve the damage. Just quick and easy. So in the case of the DL-44, I believe it has a range of 50, correct? Yeah, I'm looking at the book right now. It has a long range of 50. So extreme range would be 51 to 100 meters, but the damage would be halved. And I do believe that DL-44 is a 5D. So you would go ahead and make that roll and have the 5D, which would be 2D plus 1 or plus 2 if the game master wants it. I don't know. It makes it so that it's surprising that you're able to shoot someone out there, but it also, I don't know, if you took out the mechanic where you didn't have the damage, still kind of works.
I think so, too.
I don't know, I get it. I mean, I understand why Chris came up with the rule, and I think that in some cases people will take advantage of that or want that sort of crunch in their game. What else we got? What else we got to talk about today, Daniel?
Now it's time for Shatter Points, where Don and I discuss a number of topics that the two of us have talked about and want to share.
Meaningless crap. We talk about meaningless crap is what we do.
Strange. I don't see that there on the script. First things first, avoiding the shoot and loot.
Yeah, most of my groups, and I'm running 4 again. I finally kicked off, the Thursday night group got kicked off last week. Tonight will be the second get-together for those guys. I really haven't had a lot of problem with the shoot and loot guys. I do have a guy in one of my games, and this kind of really surprised me. They were in a prison, and they got some riot gear. They snagged it because, nobody had any armor at the time. And this is probably about 5 adventures ago. And they end up actually going back to the same prison this week. Even though no one said anything about it, one of the characters had brought that armor with him. And you know what? in hindsight, maybe they did mention it. But the entire time I'm sitting back here thinking, wait a minute, you kept this Pillsbury Doughboy riot armor just sitting in your locker, not being used. Why again? So I mean, it kind of brings up the idea of the shoot and loot. Number one, why are you holding on to this stuff at the end of that adventure? For example, there was another adventure, and I got a chance to take a look at the character sheet. The character supposedly has 3 vibro swords that he'd picked up during an adventure. He still has those on his character sheet. Why? I have no idea. Why would you keep those things? 1, I can understand, but 3?
That's something else right there. There is no encumbrance mechanic in this game.
Nope, there's not. I don't know, maybe I'll come up with something for that this week. But anyway, the whole shoot and loot, I mean, we've discussed this before. There's, I've had people in the middle of a Imperial planetary invasion come across some scout troopers and stormtroopers out in the wilderness, attack and kill them, strip them of their armor, and think that they're going to go to town and find someone to buy those. And the thought process behind it was, well, we'll find somebody to be willing to buy. I mean, it's armor. It's perfectly good. Okay, number one, if they got caught with that, with the Imperials coming in, don't you think the Imperials might be a little perturbed about that? I mean, could there be a tracking device inside these things? Could that trooper, once they're not checking in, be triangulated by their communication stuff and stuff of that nature? So, I mean, to me, we're dealing with the MMO mechanic of kill, loot, sell over and over again. And I think that needs to be redirected in your players or in players when they present those kind of things. And for me, I usually just kind of try and explain it away as common sense, One, okay, yeah, you could take this armor with you, but I mean, some of it's burned or it's got blaster scarring on it. Kind of point out to them, this is not going to end well if you find someone. No one's going to want to buy it, or if they do buy it, why wouldn't they want to turn you into the Empire for a reward? Then I start going with the whole idea of, what? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink, just like you can't herd cats. So if they're bound and determined to go at a certain direction, well, let them, and then pound them flat like a bad nail.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not in favor of being an adversarial game master, but I also think that the game master can make suggestions and suggest things to the character only so many times. And at that point, the character either makes the decision they're going to do it, or the GM by fiat has to decide, no, and I tell you what, when you tell a character that can't do something, I think a lot of times probably causes more hard feelings than if you just pound them. I don't know. I mean, have you had any experience with that, Daniel?
I've been fortunate. My groups have been very, as a matter of fact, they'll tell me that, oh no, here comes another Shadowrun game, because they're having to make plans. And the last group I usually do, they don't get murder hobo-y.
I don't like murder hobos.
No, I don't either, because they're a very one-sided type of player.
I was going to say, if you want a murder hobo game, go off and play Paranoia. I'm just saying. I mean, at least that way you get 5 or 6 clones, and you keep coming back.
And it's D6.
It is D6, and a whole lot of fun.
Another thing that has come up in Don and my discussions is min-maxers. Now, these are players who, through character creation, throw all their die into a specific set of skills.
Yep, definitely. I guess I'm not opposed to the idea of making your character special. I mean, that's sort of part of role playing. But when you do it not because it makes sense to the character, but it makes sense in a meta-mechanic way, that's when it starts grating on me as a game master. And a lot of these characters, you can see them right away. I mean, they'll be like the Duros character with 4D plus 1 in mechanical, walking around at the beginning of gameplay at 7D and 3 starship skills and stuff of that nature. Again, I'm not trying to take away from making the character special, but I'm also kind of to the point where it's like, okay, where's your... I'm sort of like the Obama theology. It's like, when's enough is enough? When you become too rich. You've made all your money. Sort of the same thing with characters. When have you improved a skill to the point where you're like, well, maybe I should be looking at some other stuff or some complementary skills, stuff like that. I don't know. It's a difficult thing. I don't like it. I don't like crunch.
I agree, absolutely. In my case, I would, if they insist on playing the player, and there is a fine line between something that's too over the top to allow in a game and just somebody who's there. To me, if they're going to dump points in the blaster, I'm going to give them a situation that's going to force them to use their minds, and force them to use knowledge, force them to use perception.
Lock doors, baby. Telling you right now.
That's right. You shoot the door. Oh, it's ray shielded. Better watch out for that blaster. Okay.
Yeah, it's magnetically sealed and it bounces off. Make a dodge roll. What? I'll give you an example of this. I had a person come over, play Star Wars. She's never played it before, and the person is a big Pathfinder player. I believe they're a big Pathfinder player. And his character concept was he wanted to play a 10-year-old prodigy. And his idea that he was pimping to me was he's really, really super smart, so he has a high knowledge, and he has a really high tech. So the idea was that he was so smart and such a prodigy that he was able to collect a bunch of junk from a local junkyard and actually make like his own personal spaceship, if you will. Sort of like Anakin Skywalker building his own pod race, except this is like a personal ship. Immediately, this kind of set off some alarms in my head, and I started asking some questions, because I was like, you realize that Star Wars doesn't really have a dump stat. Not like other games do. I mean, they do. People short tech all the time, and they short strength and knowledge quite often. But, I mean, you're not going to get any additional points. And not only that, it was just like, you're playing a 10-year-old character who's working with the rebellion, and why would you be on this base without parental attention or someone taking care of you? And I don't know. People need to sort of adjust their thinking from other game systems to Star Wars, because again, Star Wars isn't so much about the dice and the mechanics, because there's so few skills and there's really not, there's difference, but I mean not a great deal. So it becomes more about how you envision your character, their background and their personality, and then role playing it, and then using the mechanics as the framework for performing the things that you want to do that are heroic. Sort of my thoughts on it. Hey, Daniel, dark side point or not?
The group is separated from a player. The group could go back and attempt to rescue the single player, but in doing so would place themselves in mortal danger. The group decides to leave the single character behind, thinking they can come back in later and rescue him, possibly. Okay, my point on this: if the group refuses to go back, they're not being very heroic. Fear is their motivator. That's going to be a tough one. Now, I could put it in the role of a single player. Now, if there's a single player that dumps by himself, to me that's a dark side point. If the group comes together and says we want to stay behind and rescue this one person, and the guy in control of the ship leaves, definite dark side point.
Yes, this is kind of like the whole Han Solo on Bespin in reverse kind of thing. I don't know. I think this one is really kind of difficult in my mind, in that I think it would have to really kind of depend on how the characters are role-playing it. I mean, if they're being Machiavellian about it, or sort of off the cuff, well, it's Star Wars, that character's not going to die, the Game Master's not going to kill him, we can come back at next week he'll plan on an adventure and we'll go back and we'll rescue them, or something like that. If they came across as sort of that way, I think I would hammer them of a dark side point. If it was one of those things where they role-played it out, and it was an anguished scene. There's a scene where they're on the comm link with the guy going, look, if we come back, we're all going to be in like exceeding danger. And the other person's on the planet going, hey, come on, guys. You know what? Don't do it like this. I don't want to go out this way. And they're just like, we're really sorry, man. We'll come back for you if we can, but we can't do it. And they shut off the comm and make the jump into space. If they role-played it out where there was drama and there was pain involved in the decision-making process, I would be less likely to award a dark side point. In fact, in that situation, I might actually consider awarding additional character points for role-playing that out But if they just kind of just write it off, Machiavellian in their approach, I think I would just hammer them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think when a role play it out, always reward role playing.
Yep, I got one from the other night where they role played their character within the personality that they had written up, and I rewarded them an extra character point right on the spot, which is something I do in my games. Speaking of running adventures and stuff like that, Daniel, I've been kicking around the idea of basically taking movie plots and using them as an adventure plot.
Okay, what kind of movie would you use?
Well, it's funny you should mention that because I just watched Gravity yesterday. Everybody's been talking about George Clooney, Sandra Bullock, and I sat down and watched it. And to be quite honest with you guys, it was 10 minutes of dialogue and an hour 35 minutes of cool artsy-fartsy stuff.
I would go with District 9. The whole story was awesome. You have aliens that have come. They don't make any sort of aggressive motions. They initiate communications, and they have a malfunction on their ship. They're stranded. Their ship is stuck over South Africa. What happens? They come down, they try to settle, and they're crammed into what essentially is a ghetto.
So it's an allegory for apartheid.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm with you.
But it works because of the anti-alien bias that the Empire had.
I like it. Coming back to Gravity, the reason I had picked that one out, Daniel, is because it showed, it was also kind of like Die Hard. How many bad things could happen to a single person in a single day? But anyway, essentially what it is a person is on a shuttle mission, a bunch of bad things happen on a routine spacewalk. They have to go off and get a shuttle, and they have to land up on the space station and land on the planet, and stuff like that. So there was a lot of space survival and puzzle solving that was involved with it, and I thought that would really equate very well to a Star Wars adventure. Now, I'll tell you what, I thought of one more while I was thinking about this earlier, Daniel. An oldie but a goodie. You remember Tango and Cash?
Stallone? Nice.
He's nice. And Kurt Russell, the man. Basically, Ray Tango, Gabriel Cash are narcotic detectives who, while being extremely successful, can't stand each other. A crime lord, Yves Ferret, furious at the loss of income that Tango and Cash have caused him, frames the two for murder. So caught with the murder weapon on the scene of the crime, the two have an alibi, but they're thrown into prison anyway, where most of the criminals they help convict are there. And so they basically have to trust and work on each other and break out of prison, like every other Stallone movie. But just a lot of what I liked about Tango and Cash was there was a lot of character interaction, as well as some just kind of pulpish, over-the-top kind of things. I thought it was a cool idea.
I think for a great buddy-type adventure.
Mm-hmm. Like maybe a sidetrack with like two characters if you got like a short group that week.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Shooting Womp Rats. If you've got any comments, suggestions, queries, posers, most importantly, submissions, because we love getting user-created content, hit us up. SWD6Podcast is our Twitter. Our email is shootingwomprats, SHOOTINGWOMPRATS, all one word, @gmail.com. You can find us on the Ranker Pit, Shooting Womp Rats, as well as Facebook.
The blue and white. All right, that's all I got, buddy. Let's close it up. Let's button this bad boy down.
On behalf of Shooting Womp Rats, I'm Daniel.
I'm Don.
May the Force be with you.
Hey, guys, have a great weekend. Treat your family right. Bye-bye.